1. I have lived in this house with my husband and 2 teenage sons for about 2 years now. Every one of us has heard the same thing, time after time. When sitting in the living room at night, you can hear what sounds like someone pacing back and forth on the front porch. Sometimes there will be light knocking on the front door and walls. When we check, no one is there. No wild animals. Nothing that could explain the noise at all. We have kind of made a joke about it. Oh, the ghost is back. None of us are really true paranormal believers, although I am open to the possibility, just skeptical, and want to explore all options before jumping to conclusions. Well, my mother has been staying over with us for the past week and has been sleeping on a pull-out bed in the living room. She tells me that it goes on all night long and can actually get pretty intense. We are always in our bedrooms at night, on the opposite side of the house, so we had never really experienced what she had. About an hour ago, my mother and I are watching a movie in the living room, about 10 p.m. where I live. My husband has gone out and the kids are playing Smash Brothers in the back room. We had heard the pacing a few times and talked about it a little earlier. There were a few minutes of quiet, and then 3 heavy, distinct knocks on the front door that sounded just like my husband had come back, and had his hands full of groceries, so I reached over and opened the door. Still looking at the TV screen and say, "You're back, come on in." Only no one comes in. We stop the movie and I look around outside. Nothing. My husband is not back yet, nothing else is around. My mom tells me again that this happens every night. I've never heard it so distinct, but she tells me it's happening every night. She then says, sort of jokingly, "I think there was someone out there that wanted in. And I think you just gave him an invitation." At that very moment, as soon as that proclamation left her lips, the light bulb flickered about 5 seconds and then blew out completely, leaving us sitting there in the dark. We both panic for a few seconds and then kind of try to laugh it off. We restart the movie we were watching, and for the rest of the movie we heard no creeping around outside. I don't want to admit it, but I'm feeling scared right now. I went to the bathroom, and one of the bulbs in there did the same little flicker, but did not burst like the other. This isn't something that has happened before. It's not a wiring problem. At least not one that existed before the incident. So yes, I do admit that this is not a very dramatic story, and I sincerely hope it doesn't become one. But I just feel watched now. I feel like something was trying to make its presence known. I know nothing about this type of occurrence, and I am hoping someone here might help me explain what happened, and what I do next, if anything. Am I just being silly? We weren't watching a scary movie or anything, and I'm not the type to want to believe these stories are something unexplainable. But then it happens to you, and it feels a little different then. 2. The house I used to live in was in a rural area. It was an older house built in the 60s. There are about 6 acres of land to the property, and it was near the end of a dirt road neighborhood. That's what I called it. Pretty much there were 6 houses on a relatively long dirt road. The house I lived in was second to last on the dirt road. Only 2 other houses in the neighborhood were occupied at the time we moved in. I was about 7 at the time. I remember being really excited at first, because I was dreaming about getting all these different animals. And we did eventually, cats, dogs, chickens, and goats. After about a month, I decided I was finally brave enough to explore the area around the house. There was an old, dilapidated chicken coop near the front of the property, next to a patch of woods. My stepfather was in the process of rebuilding it. I remember trying to enter the woods near the kitchen coop, and it felt wrong. That's the only way I could describe it. It just felt wrong, like I wasn't supposed to be there, so I left. I would only realize years later that was just the first experience. Within the first 6 months of living there, I begged my parents for a pair of curtains for my room. My room was facing the backyard and the greater wooded area, and I constantly felt like I was being watched, and I hated it. I was in near hysterics about it, until they finally got me curtains, and that only provided a bit of comfort. As the years went on, I knew something was wrong with that house and the area around it. I knew there were places on that land I shouldn't go and I should avoid. I used to have dreams looking back on it. I believe it was sleep paralysis, but as a child I just put them off as weird, creepy dreams. I also had a night terror once, and it was probably one of the worst nights of my life, and the worst personal experience I had at that house. There were shadows everywhere, and they were yelling over each other, and I couldn't understand them. I was screaming for my parents until my voice went out, and I couldn't speak anymore. No one heard me. It fucked me up for a long time. I still experienced other things. There was a crawl space behind my closet, and I would hear things moving around and making noises inside of it occasionally. I tried to ignore it. And there was a constant presence in my room and the room next to mine. Sometimes it got so overwhelming I couldn't stand to be in that room, and I had to go sleep with my parents or living room. And then there were a couple times I heard weird noises during the night when I was staying up watching TV. It sounded like coyotes, but distorted and just wrong. That's the closest sound I can compare it to. I think I know what it was, but I won't say its name. And then there was the thing I was most terrified of, and that's why I always avoided the entrance to the attic. Because there was a thing in the attic. An awful thing. I never saw it. I never heard it, thank God I didn't, but just walking past or near the entrance to the attic would make me terrified, sick and uneasy. None of the animals would go near or past it either. After my parents divorced, my mom and I left that house, and I'm glad we did. Because according to my mother's ex-husband, it got a lot worse, but that's not my experience to share. I honestly just chalked it up to me being an anxious kid until recently, when I was talking to my mother's ex who recently moved out of that house. I've known that man my entire life, and I've never seen or heard him so terrified. Even my mother has experienced things in that house, and she doesn't believe in the paranormal. I experienced so many more things in that house, and kind of growing up there was somewhat traumatizing. And I still lock my door every night, even though I'm far away from that hellhole. 3. This story is not my own, but belongs to my beautiful wife. Since it's from her youth, from a time before we both knew each other, we will call her Awkward Tomboy. All dialogue is translated from her native language to the best of my ability. But first, the usual disclaimers. My nose makes bubbles. Background. At some point in the past, let's say between 1600 and 1850 before Common Era, there was a war between my wife's birth country and one of their neighbors. During that war, one of her ancestors died in battle. He was a cavalry general and fought valiantly. His side won the day, but alas, he did not live to see it. He is also the ancestor of Melanie and Flamingo, my wife's grandmother and mother respectively. Melanie lives until her death in the same home he lived in during his lifetime. Even though it is a bit of a drive away from her home, Awkward Tomboy and her siblings often visit and stay the night at Grandma's house. The horses. While there was a time that horses were kept on this property, that has not been the case for over 100 years at the time of this story. Despite the decided lack of horses anywhere near the house, many nights one can hear horses neighing close by. There are never any hoofprints or droppings, the fence is always secured and closed, but the horses still sing at night. Often a horse can be heard galloping up to the house and pulling to a stop with a neigh. But again, no way could one be in the property, let alone galloping at that speed. Army boots. Sometimes, one can also hear the sound of solid wooden-soled boots such as the military of earlier times would wear, walking around both outside and inside the home. This is often accompanied with the sounds of the front door opening and closing before and after the boots are heard. Melanie just calls it another visit from the General. The night of no sleep. This night, Awkward Tomboy is visiting with her 3 older sisters. Ellie and her are sharing a bed in a room just off the main salon. They should be asleep, but they are not. Ellie has a great sense of humor, and they are joking and laughing well after any signs of anyone else still being awake have long since subsided. While they are joking, they hear the horses sing. They shush each other and listen, and then slowly start to work up some steam again when they hear the galloping horse and shush each other again. The horse stops. They hear the jangle of its bridle and a thud of 2 solidly built boots hitting the ground. Now they duck their heads under the covers and pretend to be asleep. While faking sleep, they listen and the boots approach the door. The bolt is heard to move and the door opens. The boots cross the salon. Now they hear the bolt of their door being drawn back. Wide-eyed, they stare at each other, and well and truly pretend to be out cold while still staring at each other. The boots stop at the foot of the bed for what feels like an eternity. Long seconds become long minutes. And Awkward Tomboy is about to peek out to see when the boots start to move again. Slowly, deliberately, the boots walk all the way around the bed, stopping again at the foot of the bed. Then they go back out of the bedroom, and the door closes and the bolt slides back into place. Across the salon, and the front door opens again. The boots go out the front door, and again it closes, and the bolt slides back into place. The boots walk back, and the horse neighs, jangle of bridle and stirrups, and the horse gallops off again. The singing of the other horses starts to fade. They stare at each other, and in a whispered scream, "Ah!" They spend the rest of the night talking about what just happened, and decidedly not sleeping. They cannot sleep. As they see it, there are 3 primary problems with what they heard. The front door is locked from the inside by a sliding bolt. It can only be locked and unlocked from the inside. The door to the bedroom has the same kind of lock. Only someone in the bedroom could lock or unlock that door. The bed is up against the wall. There is no physical way to walk all the way around it. No one else has reported hearing anything that night. They will return to sleep over again at Melanie's house, but it will be some time before they do. 4. This story is from when I was a security guard, used to fill in extra coverage at various sites. I'm one of the guys that can send anywhere during this time. I fill in shifts at some 60 different projects. But first, the usual disclaimers. This post was delivered physically, so any errors in formatting or spelling were introduced by you during reception. You should feel truly guilty about this. Background. First off, I know not all believe in otherworldly things. No cheese off my biscuit, you do you. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I can only share what I experienced for myself and leave you to draw your own conclusions. Am I a liar, insane, or a fair reporter of an odd situation? I know what I know. I know what I believe based on it. I also know what I believed before I had these experiences, so I get it. I have an extended coverage I am assigned to. Over the better part of a year, I spend most of my weekend nights patrolling a 100-year-old haunted building in the downtown area of our major city. There is a great deal of reconstruction and asbestos removal going on during this period. Every weekend I arrive to find different areas no longer accessible due to asbestos abatement or other construction needs. A fair amount of the building is being used by active businesses, which makes the reconstruction trickier. Many of the changes being made are a postmodern insult to the classic features of the building. It hurts my head to watch the beautiful and elegant appointments give way to the new stylish and moronic ones. At the beginning of the construction, there are 2 side hallways that remain intact, and that feature the original office configuration of the building. They will both be destroyed before the construction is finished. One of them is on the 12th floor, and even in the bright light of day, that particular corridor is oppressive and creepy. You simply cannot get enough light into that space to make it feel bright. Now, I had heard the reports of various deaths associated with the building over its 100-year history. The lawyer shot by his jilted lover on the top floor. It was a long-forgotten trial of the century from the same century that saw the O.J. Simpson case. The young woman in white who purportedly tried to fly from the roof and failed. 3-year-old who cries in the basement, something to do with childhood measles, I'm told. But nowhere do I find any reports that feature the 12th floor. But that notwithstanding, there is something dark and brooding in that corridor. If the light is out down that hall at night, I shine my flashlight down it and move on quickly. The event. Now, there is one particularly active night, by which I mean the whole building seems to be vibrating with energy and strange things afoot. It is the 13th of the month and a full moon. Wheeled scaffolding in one area under construction is in a different location on every patrol. I never see or hear it move, but it is all over that place that night. Now, this has happened before and remains a creepy curiosity. But this night, it was just more than normal. On the second to top floor, I see what appears to be the shadow of another person coming up behind me. And from the position of its head relative to my own head, there may be 5 feet, 1.5 meters away, when I spin around and see nothing. Just an empty hallway. Looking back the other way, the second shadow is gone, and so I go on down quickly to the 12th floor. As I walk down the long main corridor towards the old creepy side corridor, I feel like I am being watched. I look down that creepy pit of darkness without use of light, and there to my horror see the shadow figure of a man standing in the middle of the hall, with his head flopped to one side in a most unnatural way. If not for it being the right height for someone standing on the floor, it really looks like a hanging man. It is blackest black against black, with no hesitation. I shine my flashlight down the hall to get a better look and see nothing. Just an empty hallway. I lower the flashlight again, and now it is just a black hallway. The figure does not reappear in the returning darkness. I've had enough of this corridor for the night. I will not patrol it again this shift. I turn to go down the stairs to 11th floor. I have this intense feeling like I should watch my step, like someone or something wishes to push me down the stairs. I grip the rails on both sides, and as I descend a few steps down, I feel a gust of air at my back. There is nothing in the building that can produce a draft on these stairs. Never any time before that or since did I ever feel a gust of air on any of the stairs in the building. But this night, in this context, I did. In the early morning, shortly after sunrise, I turned the keys over to my relief for the next 12 hours. I say nothing to him of the events of the night. When I return 12 hours later for my next shift, he shares with me having felt unsafe on one of the stairs in the building, and even feeling wind at his back on it. He can't figure out where it came from. I ask him which stairs. Of course, it's the same stairs from the 12th floor to the 11th floor, where I had felt it on the night before. My first patrol, I again feel unsafe on that stair and a much smaller puff of air at the back of my head. I turned and yelled, "You've got to do better than that if you really want to scare me." Nothing else happened that shift. The building was quiet again and calm. Aftermath. Until they tore out this creepy corridor to replace it with a modern office configuration, I always made sure to get all the lights down it turned on before the sun went down. Some 4 months later, I learned from one of the tenants that a man hung himself in that hall on the 12th floor during the 1930s. Somehow this news came as no surprise to me. Now, When they started to dismantle the original hallway on the 12th floor, the creepy presence that normally lived down there brooding becomes rather more active and a bit less predictable. I now feel it increasingly out in the main corridor that still remains essentially unchanged from the original build. At first, it feels angry towards me. I dread going to that floor every patrol. Some patrols take the elevator from the floor above or below, look out at that floor, and then go on to the next floor and leave it at that. Then I start to feel it there in the middle of the main corridor, in front of the elevators. If I take the stairs down that are next to the side corridor, I always feel a malicious presence that desires to see me slip, trip, or fall down those stairs. But to be honest, I hate going there for a completely different reason too. I cannot begin to express how much I dislike the tacky changes they are making to this classic building. It feels like a violation of our beautiful turn-of-the-century soul. On one occasion, when the creepy, brooding presence seems to be absent, I look over what they're doing to the space that had been the side corridor, and I shake my head and honestly weep a little. It is such an effort. Suddenly I realize I am not alone. That unseen thing is there, but it is no longer angry towards me. It seems to have decided I am not part of the problem, but feel the same way about the changes as it does. It follows me down 2 more floors before it withdraws. As it leaves, it feels to me like it just can't stay away from the 12th floor, its floor, for very long at all. This changes my patrols for the remainder of the time I'm working this site. It is never again an angry, creepy experience to visit that floor. This, despite the door to the new offices in the area of the old side corridor constantly unlocking itself. I have to relock it at least 3 times a night. I often feel its presence a floor or 2 before the 12th floor, and it stays with me for a floor or 2 after. Sometimes I feel thoughts in my head. It's sort of like the experience I often have, where I'm about to open my mouth to say something just to have a friend or sibling say the exact thing like they had thought of it first, and I had somehow gotten it from them before they spoke. Or like the way I always know when my children are lying to me. They really hated that. It feels like the being wants me to know that he hadn't killed himself. This was done to him by others. But then a month later, a quiet admission. I did it. I can't take it back. Accompanied with a wave of such a feeling of sorrow, regret, and remorse. Then it feels like it wants to leave here and go home with me. I simply say, that will never work. My family wouldn't care for you being there. That floor feels very sad for the rest of that shift. I looked into it. I could never find his name or likeness or the full story of his hanging. Only the rumor shared by a tenant of his death. And while I've never been back to the building since this particular contract ended, I suspect if I ever return, I'll have a strange friend still waiting for me there. 5. In a previous post, I shared 4 stories of the pyramid shoes, the Connect second player, the looped gameplay, and the goodbye, as the ghost in my childhood home said farewell to us. However, I honestly thought that ghost may have been tied to that house, and I would not have to be the target of any more ghostly pranks. But, well, I was proven wrong this last Tuesday. The target would be my mother again. So Tuesday around 7 a.m., both my mother and father were awake, with me being asleep or just about to wake up. My mother made her way downstairs to the kitchen to prepare the coffee of all mornings. You know, the teeth-darkening source of energy I have gotten dependent on. She poured the water out of a plastic beaker and closed the lid on the coffee maker. It wasn't too close to the edge. Well, after she bent over to open the floor-level pantry to get who knows what, just as she opened the pantry, the plastic beaker flew onto the floor, scaring my mother into a high-pitched squeak. Then silence, My father rushed downstairs to check on her, and she explained what happened. Now, this plastic beaker is tall and with a wide base, also weighing 189 grams, or 0.42 pounds, so it's not easy to tip over. Only a strong wind may have been able to launch it as it happened, and there was no wind. This has left me wondering if this ghost is actually attached or is part of my mother's family, and I have been targeted. Also, I think it could be classified as a poltergeist, but I am not that versed on ghost definitions to make that call. Either way, if it's the same ghost, I am glad that it is not the aggressive type. I think we can put up with some mischief if the level of them is this soft. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 237. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, share, and subscribe in any order you please, no pressure. And it would be appreciated if you share the video with all your friends, family, and various social medias. That is very helpful to me and the sustaining of this channel. Now, before I go on, I have a little bit of a shout out to give to the author of story number 2. That is Reddit user Revenant Rat. Thank you very much for letting us use your story, Revenant Rat. Alrighty, Friday. Well, I would get down on Friday, but I've got a lot of work to do, so none of that for me. Let's see. Did we do a stream last week? We did. So we'll probably do a Saturday stream tomorrow. And no idea what we're doing, really. I'm a little bored with No Man's Sky for now. Hopefully there'll be another update soon. A little bored with Phasmophobia as well. Although, they have got a proper development team now, so that's going to be getting overhauled, and I've looked at some of the information they've put out, and it's like a massive overhaul, they're changing everything. But it all sounds good. So we'll see what they do with that. That might reinvigorate the game for me. And, well, we'll work out what we're doing tomorrow night. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go for now and melt into a puddle because, as, like the man said, the fire rises. Yeah, so heat rises, so not good, which means melty freezer. I have ice lollies and ice cream in the freezer, but I'm trying to be good and not devour them all at once. I'll probably just plop myself on the sofa and say, "Computer, chill out," and it'll go, "Okay." Then it'll come on. Then I'll get too cold later, and I'll have to yell at the damn thing to make it go off. It feels awesome being able to turn like your fan and various other things on just by voice control. But they don't factor in that some of these things make noise. So they don't get picked up. See, I just voice activated that dog there. But some of them don't get picked up by the microphone if there's noise going on. So you've got to kind of loud and shout at the damn thing, "Turn it off, you stupid cow." Anyway, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.